Hello everyone. In this video, we will look at what is the right section order that you should choose for while attempting the GMAT. Okay. So a lot of students ask me this question, so I thought I'll create a short video on this to help you with this. Now, before we begin, in case you're not aware of it, GMAT allows you to take the test in basically three different sequence orders. You can choose any one of them. So in sequence 1, you start off with AW and IR. In sequence 2 and 3, you do AW and IR at the end. Okay. In sequence 1, you start with AW and IR, then do quant and then verbal. In sequence 2, you start with quant and then do verbal. In sequence 3, you basically swap the order of quant and verbal. So which one is the best for you? Honestly, before I get into the depth of the video, let me be very clear. The right sequence depends on you as an individual. What fits you the most? What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my thoughts, my viewpoints, and some parameters that you need to consider while choosing the right sequence. And then I'll tell you how you can identify which one is the best for you. Okay, so let's get started. So we will first go by elimination. We'll try to eliminate one sequence order, which probably I will never recommend any student to go for. That is sequence number 1. Now, what's the problem with sequence 1? The problem with sequence 1 is you're starting off with a section AW and IR. Now, this section is not going to affect your score out of 800. Okay, I don't mean to say that AW and IR are not important, but clearly they are not more important than quant and verbal. Okay, so if you are starting with AW and IR, you are coming to the test with a fresh mind and you're starting off with a section which is not the most important. You're probably wasting a lot of your mental energy there. By the time you complete AW and IR, you will be a little bit tired, obviously. So it doesn't make sense to go with the sequence, and that's why I'm going to reject this sequence right away. Okay, so let's talk about sequence 2 and sequence 3. What should you choose? So there are two school of thoughts here. Okay, there is one school of thought, let's write it thought 1, which says that you should start with your strengths. Okay, so for example, if your strength is quant, and let me write it over here, if your strength is quant, it says that you should start with quant first. Now, what is the reason behind it? The reason is pretty simple. People who believe in this thought, they say that since you're starting with your strengths, you are much more confident, you will do well, and that will keep your motivation level high during the whole test. Okay, and this is something which will help you in doing the weaker area well, because obviously you're starting with your strength, you're supposed to do well, so it will help you in your weak area. So they recommend that if your strength is quant, you follow this order, that you start with quant and then go to verbal. Now, what is the second school of thought? So the second school of thought is, the people who believe in the second school of thought say that you should start with your weakness first. And why is that so? They say that the primary reason for doing this is when you are just starting a test, okay, you are fresh, okay, you are high on energy, you are not feeling fatigued, you are much more focused. So if you start with your weakness when you are fresh and you have high energy, you will be able to do well in it. So I'll take the same example. So for example, the student itself, then in this case, the people who believe in second thought will start with verbal because verbal is the weakness. Okay, and then they say that after doing your weak areas, you should go to your strengths, because see, you are strong in the strong area, right? You're strong in quant for a reason. If you're strong in something, then it means that you can probably manage it with even less effort, even when you are not feeling fresh. So people who believe in second school of thought always say that you should start with your weakness first and then you should go to your strength. The idea is pretty simple. You focus on your weakness, you do the weak area when you are fresh, when you're not feeling fatigued. So you do well on your weak areas and then you go to your strong area. Okay, that's the first reason they follow this school of thought. Now there are obviously pros and cons of both the approaches. For example, T1 has a thought, one has a con as well. There's a negative side to it, which says that in case you don't do so well in your strong area, you're panicked or you're under stress or whatever, it will affect your weak area as well. Okay, there is a negative side to the second thought as well, that if you don't do well on your weak area, since you know that you are weak in it, it is going to affect your strength as well. Okay, so but I believe that both the thoughts, both the cons or negatives, have more to do with panicking than anything else. Okay, so if you panic, it can hurt in any scenario, whatever happens. So the two school of thoughts I have presented, one is you start with your strengths, uh, where you focus on doing well, and the idea is, if motivation is very very important for you, if you feel panicked and you need motivation, then you should go first, the first school of thought, the first trend, thereby choosing the strong area first. And the second school of thought basically focuses on being fresh. Okay, not feeling fatigued. Okay, so if you're not fatigued, if you are fresh, you do well in the weak area. Okay, so that is where the two school of thoughts are different. Now, as a student, I have tried doing both. Okay, and I feel that for me, T2 works better, because when I'm fresh, I'm full on energy, I can actually do well on my weak areas. Now, honestly speaking, when I took GMAT, my score was Q50 and V41. So I won't say that I'm strong in one area and weak in another, because my scores were pretty good in both of them. But if you ask me in which section I'm slightly better at, I would say I'm slightly better at quant. Okay, I would say slightly better at quant, and that is why I chose to do verbal first. Okay, that is one reason, not the only reason, by the way. So it helped me to take on verbal with a fresh mind. That is one reason. The second reason why I chose verbal first was that verbal requires you to read a lot. You have to read RC passages, you have to read CR arguments, you have to draw a lot of inferences from a lot of content which is there. I understand in quant also you need to think, but in verbal you have to think from, you have to process a lot of information at one time. So it is very important that your mind is not feeling fatigued. If you are fatigued, then it is not going to help you. So I always believe that I should start with verbal, irrespective of whether it's my strength or my weakness, because it helps me overall. And then when I go to quant, even if I feel a little tired after doing verbal, I know that I can manage quant even when I'm slightly tired. Okay, so I always prefer going for sequence 3. So this is my thought on the right sequence to be followed. But yeah, as I told you, you should not follow sequence 2 or sequence 3. You should follow thought 1 or thought 2, one of the two thoughts, school of thoughts. Okay, now what is the best way to find which one works for you? Okay, the best way to do that is, I'm going to write it here and explain it for you. So what you do is, you simply take 4 marks. Okay, let's say mark 1, mark 2, mark 3, and mark 4. Okay, let me make it very simple for you. In mark 1, you try following school of thought 1. Okay, then in mark 2, you try the second school of thought. See which one of these two is better, whether T1 suits you more or T2 suits you more. If you find that, okay, it is actually T2 that works best for you, take another mark with it. Okay, and see whether you're getting the same results, whether you still feel that T2 is better, which is starting with your weaknesses, is better for you, then continue doing it in the next mock as well. But if you feel that you should give a try to T1, then switch to T1. Okay, and see which one is better. By the time you have taken 4 marks, you would be pretty clear which one of the two thoughts work for you best. Now, in case you're switching, in case you move to T1 after the third mock, and you want to see that whether T1 works better for you, then I would recommend taking a 5th mock before the exam as well, and take another, follow T1 again. The idea is, when you're going for your GMAT, before going for your GMAT, you should have at least taken 2 mocks in the same sequence. Okay, so just make sure that you take 2 mocks in the same sequence. So it's very simple. If you are following school of thought 2, you take 1 mock, you take the second mock, and you feel that T2 is better for you, you do T2 again, you do T2 again in the 4th mock. You probably may not need to do M5, mock 5 for understanding which sequence works for you. But in case you feel after the 3rd mock that T1, you need to try T1 once more, then I would recommend taking the 5th mock, where you take the order as T1, and then you finally go for the GMAT and follow T1 on the GMAT. Okay, so I feel this video was helpful. Feel free to ask me if you have any questions regarding the sequence order. All the best for your GMAT. Thank you.